No, thank you very much, Senator McBroom, and thank you, fellow members of the committee and all other interested parties here. This is obviously some interesting times in which we live. I appreciate the opportunity to address this body. I know there's a lot of discussion around what happened in the 2020 election. Hope to provide a lot of information around that today. And keep in mind, what I'm going to be talking about today is just the tip of the iceberg due to time constraints, but a lot of people are here to provide testimony. And even right now I see signs that say, show us the evidence. Please understand there is plenty of evidence. The toughest part on this whole thing is sorting it out and triaging it and identify what is most pertinent to the discussions of the day. And today I'm going to focus in on one particular body of evidence. The rest of the folks can chime in on the rest of them. And as you pointed out, I was present at the Detroit AV Counting Board. I was there as a poll challenger, certified through the Election Integrity Fund, which is an organization I helped start quite a while ago in anticipation for concerns around this upcoming election. And in addition to that, which is pertinent to my testimony today, I'm also a certified Microsoft Small Business Specialist. I work in cabling design for the International Space Station. I worked on with the Department of Defense as a contractor on advanced simulation systems for the military, wargaming systems. So pretty comfortable in the software area. There's been a huge narrative around this whole election that says, number one, it started off saying that there is no voter fraud. Then the narrative changed in the media to there is no widespread voter fraud. Then it changed into there is no widespread voter fraud that could impact the results of the election. Well, what I hope to provide you today is just a snippet of information that indicates no, it was rampant. It doesn't have to be rampant to be significant. If we have voter fraud in just one out of our 83 counties, if that county is Wayne County, you got an issue because over 800,000 votes were cast in that county. And that's much more than the margin of difference we're talking about in the election for the president. So key questions. Now, obviously, I've been in the position where you guys are at right now. So my first thing is I'm trying to figure out what question I should be asking when I'm hearing all this testimony. So if I were in your shoes, I'd be asking, first and foremost, what's the chain of custody for the election artifacts that we're talking about? Has it been broken? Number two, is there evidence of election fraud? Number three, was there evidence that election statutes were violated? And you can have election fraud not violate a statute if we don't have that hole covered in statute right now. Was there evidence of any third party or external manipulation of our election data? And how do you respond? And this is very important, and we'll talk about this at the end. How do you respond if the answer to any of these questions is yes? All right, so key concept, chain of custody. And I simplify this to just 4 key links in that chain of custody. Qualified voter files, number 1. Number 2 is the poll books. Number 3 is the ballots themselves. And number 4, which is where I'm going to focus my testimony today, is on the vote tally itself. How do you communicate the tabulated results upstream to all points, up to the county, out to the media, et cetera? How does that information get packaged and shipped out? And we're going to talk about what we've saw as far as concerns here. A lot of people are testifying here today are going to talk about a lot of things that happen specific to the poll books and specific to the ballots. The QVF is not something that happened on the ground here, but that's something that should be of concern as well. But let's focus in on the vote tabulation. So there's all kinds of anomalies that were identified that after the fact in the election when we actually looked at the vote tally results. And I'm not going to go into any of the details on any of this stuff in the interest of time. But as a person who was on the ground at the Detroit AV Counting Board, it's tough for me to go off and see a big picture item. If I can't actually trace the vote tallies coming out of the tabulator, I can't see where there are specific anomalies that are happening. This is something that happens after the fact. I will attest to some things that corroborate nefarious purposes towards the end of what we did when you look at this data in context of what we did observe. First thing I want to point out is one of the things that when you're looking at data that was transmitted during the election, there was something very interesting that happened. And they were transmitting, we have evidence that from the Dominion voting system, there is a transmittal of fractional vote data. Now, you guys have done a lot of votes inside the Senate, as I did when I was serving my 2 terms. I don't recall any of those vote tallies up on the board having a decimal point. Do you guys? So that indicates right off the top that something's rotten in Denmark. So I'm going to start off just one quick example. I'm not going to belabor this. I call it the little switch, where we all acknowledge that there are some issues with votes. If it wasn't for an alert, regular old citizen by the name of Bill Bailey identifying that this doesn't make sense that Antrim County went for Joe Biden and and led to a recount, we never would have understood or found that vote flip of 6,000 votes. And what are some possible technical explanations for that? Well, we know what the official explanations were. They said that it was initially a software glitch, and then it was changed to a clerical error. But the technical explanations for what might have happened is that when you scan a ballot, it's going to be coded in accordance with it's going to have a QR code that tells you what the ballot type is on it or what the ballot style is. And if you flip that ballot style so that maybe you juxtapose the position of maybe a presidential candidate from one to the other, all of a sudden what would normally have been registered as a vote maybe for Trump turns into a vote for Biden. Another way that that could happen, and how you can, this is the only way that I know of that can explain a fractional vote, is if you implemented a ranked choice voting algorithm. That's the only technical part of the Dominion suite that I am aware of that could lead to a fractional value. You could have data manipulation via remote access, and then you can also address the need for, there's an opportunity that if you do not do a robust public accuracy test where you've investigated all the different permutations of votes that could occur, people that know that there's loopholes in those public accuracy tests can take advantage of them in the algorithm and flip votes in context of that. In particular, be concerned about the idea that they could flip, if you don't test for this explicitly in your public accuracy test, they can flip from one candidate to a write-in candidate, and we have an affidavit attesting to that in the, among our many examples of evidence. So, where's this election data saved? Well, on these compact flashcards. There's a primary and secondary flashcard for each one of the tabulators, and that's where that data is collected. There's also a security key that enables you to update the information on these compact flashcards. Then we're going to go into the big switch. And so we talk about the margin here in Michigan to be about 154,188 if we're just focused in on the presidential race. And in that context, what we've identified through sworn affidavit is that there were votes that were being dumped in counties of Kent, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties that just defy logic because they were dumped at a time within about a 2.5-hour time period that there's no possible way that you could have tabulated that many votes with the scanners that were on site for those particular locations in that. So specifically, let's zero in on the Detroit AV Counting Board. And I'm not going to go into any of the details associated with this, except I want to highlight one thing that came out of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, and that is specifically in the results of this AV Counting Board, the official results that were posted by Wayne County indication that paperwork's not in order. So what did I specifically focus in on? Like I said, I'm zeroing in on vote tallies. There's going to be a lot of evidence on the other elements, but I wanted to focus in on the big picture when I got in there. And due to my background and kind of a network techie geek, you guys all know me well enough to know that I'm very geeky in that context, right? I like to focus in on what was going on with the network configuration because I wanted to understand how those vote tallies were being communicated. So my first question was up to Chris Thomas, who is serving as a consultant for the city of Detroit. And Chris, as you know, is the state elections director here in Michigan for decades, very knowledgeable gentleman on voting process. And I had what I thought was a pretty simple question. I go, Chris, I want to know how you maintain chain of custody between these tabulators and all points north up to the county, and where are these reported, where are these results being reported? And he stated that he didn't know. All right. So I kept asking him. Finally, the end game was, I don't know, and I'm not going to tell you. That was the final answer I got. And I thought that was kind of disconcerting because my role there was as a poll challenger to make sure we protected the integrity of the election. And I was specifically, I can see physically, I can see a ballot. I can see if an envelope signature doesn't match a poll book signature. That stuff I can see. If you're communicating via the internet, via the Ethernet cables that were in there, via computer, it's very difficult to get in there and follow those electrons up the chain here to see what's going on here. So I wanted to know exactly how that's done. In most precincts in my former Senate district, what would happen is the way you communicate the results is that you wait until the end of the night, You do a final tabulation of the books, and you put all the final results. So you get a dump onto a flash drive. You put that flash drive into a sealed envelope, and you send that up the chain either to the city or to the county, actually to both. There's probably about 5 copies of the flash drive made. And you send it, it's in a secure package, and you can maintain that chain of custody. What I saw in Detroit was something more concerning. Every one of those tabulator machines was connected via Ethernet cable. That Ethernet cable connected to a router. That router connected to all the other computers in that network, including up to what's called the local data center, which was managing all the returns for 503 precincts here in the city of Detroit. What was further concerning was that I saw a Ethernet cable coming from the wall connected into one of these routers that was connected to the local data center, which was connected to all the tabulators and adjudicators, and that seemed to indicate an outside internet connection. When I flip on my phone and I look for connected networks, I also understand that there's a wireless network called AV_connect that was accessible. I wonder what AV stands for. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's probably something to do with absentee vote. So, bottom line, I was a little concerned with the physical configuration. So the stuff I could observe, here's the network topology that I put together the night that I got back after serving on the at the AV Counting Board, and what it showed to me explicitly was a connection to the internet. Furthermore, I asked all the election officials that were there, Daniel Baxter, I asked former state representative David Nathan, I said, are these connected to the internet? And they all denied internet connectivity. Yet when I went around to all the monitors on it, and you guys probably have Windows laptops with you right now, you go down to the bottom right-hand corner and look at that little, there's a little icon there talking about your network connectivity. When you roll your mouse over there, it'll pop up in Word saying connected to internet. All right, so why is that a big deal? Well, let's go through. First, I want to demonstrate these guys were indeed connected to a local area network, and that local area network includes a connection to the local data center. Chris Thomas has already, through other statements, validated that local data center was connected to the internet. And for anybody who's not familiar with IT, if one computer on a network is connected to the internet, all the computers are connected to the internet. Now, the folks at Dominion will say that there's an air gap because they have a firewall in between there, and they use encryption for all the communications. I'm telling you, there's folks from that attend these DEF CON conferences every single year that can hack into a system like that in a matter of seconds. So, no, there's no such thing as an air gap. And you think something like elections determine who the leader of the free world is going to be for the next 4 years might tempt somebody to go off and play games with that? And we've got evidence that that indeed happened. So further evidence of, even the contract with the state of Michigan defines that these are designed, this equipment's designed to connect to the Ethernet and also in some cases, specifically via cell-based modems, to the internet. The Dominion Tech Support Manual says these are designed to connect via Ethernet cables. So, so why does it matter? Here's why it matters. How many of you guys had a chance to read Sidney Powell's lawsuit in the state of Michigan? It's about 75 pages. Good. Hopefully you went through that in detail. Because in there, it highlights some things that should be a concern to every single senator, every single representative, no matter what party you're a member of. And I'm telling you, all the data that I've collected here, I want to make sure it's clear that everybody understands. I've been working with Bernie Sanders supporters. I've been working with registered Democrats. I've been working with libertarians, independents, and Republicans of all stripes. The stuff that we're talking about here should not be just a concern for Republicans. This should be a concern for everybody who calls themselves an American. So in this context, I want to highlight the detailed evidence on this. Go read the affidavits that are put into that Sidney Powell lawsuit. I'm not going to go through in detail here. Bottom line is, if it's connected to the internet, you open the door to nefarious actors outside of this country. And that should be a concern to everybody. Furthermore, we discovered that the National Institute of Standards and Technology left a proverbial key under the mat, essentially provided a map for anybody. By the way, first, before I get into that, we found admin passwords for the Dominion voting system, and the testimony attests to that, available up on the dark web. People could get access to it. That's important because with this key under the mat left by a gentleman out at the NIST, It provided all the specs or the specific files to look for in these election systems and what their sizes were so that you could mask any abnormal traffic that would happen when you're hacking a system. So is there any corroboration to what could happen with somebody accessing this via the internet and what we observed out at the polls? Yes, we've got affidavits talking about computer or network anomalies that happened at these, including one error message that says, warning, this computer is being hacked. So guys, this is really happened. It happened at the poll books for that. There's adjudicator, or I think it was the adjudicator stations that had the computers down for about a half an hour inside of Detroit due to a network-related issue. Furthermore, there's another data piece here that's not on here, but I talked early on about, we've got an affidavit that attests specifically to poll worker in Detroit that observed the precinct printout at the end of the day and noticed that there was a bunch of write-in votes for that particular precinct. And the thing that was odd about that is that they did not see one ballot with a write-in vote on it the whole time they were doing that. They got an affidavit to that effect. So what does this all add up to? I'm just going to say this is a referendum. There's only two choices for each of you in this context. Number one, you believe in principle of constitutional governance and you realize that chain of custody is broken, there's significant evidence of election fraud, et cetera. Or, and I'm not saying this term lightly here, or there's an attempted coup. And those aren't my words. That's the word of a registered Democrat, Brian McCaffrey, when he made his observation as to what was going on in the Philadelphia counting board. Like I said, this should concern people of every party inside America. Any American citizen should be concerned about what they're seeing here. So what can you do as legislators? Well, I'm just going to give you what I would recommend, and you guys can take the steps that you believe is appropriate. There's a lot of people are trying to convince you right now that there's nothing you can do. It's been certified, move on. There's nothing else that you can go off and do. I'm telling you that's not the truth. In the United States Constitution, Article 2 gives the legislature specific authority on how to allocate electoral college votes. That doesn't mean that the governor has any say in it. It means it's, and because of Article 6, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, Supremacy Clause, that supersedes anything we may have in statute here in the state of Michigan. Furthermore, Article 4, Section 4 guarantees a Republican form of government. A Republican form of government means that people elect their representatives, which implies that we've got integrity around the election process itself. I believe this is just a small sample that one chain of this overall chain of custody around this election was broken, and I just submit it to you for consideration. There are options before you, and I'd just like to yield the rest of my time here, if I could, for any questions that you may have.